like to get started. We do have an author here as well. So in seeing no other authors at the moment, Senator Ashburn, just since you are here, if you are ready to go.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you. And this would be item, I believe, number 3, SB 812.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and distinguished assembly members. This bill requires cities and counties to make a diligent effort when developing their housing element to obtain, assess, and analyze the appropriate information on the housing needs of individuals with developmental disabilities. We have accepted the committee's recommended amendments. First, to clarify the issue of who is, in fact, under the definition of developmentally disabled, and to, on the second instance, accept the requirement that it would apply only to the next housing update of the local housing agency and not ongoing development plans. As you know, there are people in our community with developmental disabilities, and in particular, we have this growing population of persons affected with autism. And what this bill says, that as local governments prepare their housing element of their general plans, they take into consideration the housing needs of people with developmental disabilities. Makes perfect sense, the right thing to do. Hopefully it'll be helpful in the future. And so I ask your consideration, and thank you for the maker of the motion and the second.
Thank you. Of course, we don't have a quorum yet, but once we do have that, we will be able to proceed with that. No.
A couple witnesses.
Yes, please. Witnesses in support, please.
Okay, thank you. My name is Lisa Jackson. I'm the housing specialist for the Association of Regional Center Agencies. And this is an important inclusion in the housing elements because people with developmental disabilities, even though information may be provided to local jurisdictions, that information sometimes is not included. This is one of the most vulnerable populations, I think, in our community. And regional centers provide services to over 240,000 people with developmental disabilities in our state. And the Association of Regional Center represents 21 of the 21 regional centers throughout the state of California. And it really is the unique combination of intellectual and physical disabilities that require attention in the housing elements to support folks with developmental disabilities. Special considerations such as green building, universal design, site location are really important considerations for folks with developmental disabilities. So we are looking forward to the inclusion of people with developmental disabilities in housing elements. ARCA and the regional centers, I think, are very well suited to provide information to the local jurisdictions.
Great, thank you. Next,
thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Rick Rollins. I'm here representing COA, which is the Alliance of California Autism Organizations, 52 organizations here in California that represents families of people with autism. As you're aware, this state is in the midst of an autism epidemic. We're adding about 13 new children a day, 7 days a week, to the regional center system with full syndrome autism. We also know that 65% of the intakes into the system are kids with autism. The autism population is skewed right now towards very young children. We have more 6- and 7-year-old kids in the system than we have all the adults combined. 80% of the autism population is under the age of 21. The housing needs of this population is going to be a growing issue as we move forward. And on behalf of myself, I'm a parent of a 19-year-old son with autism, co-founder of the UC Davis Mind Institute, and someone who deeply is concerned about this issue. We want to thank Senator Ashburn and the good work of the Senate Select Committee on Autism and Related Disorders, which is a great bipartisan select committee in the Assembly working on these issues, and would strongly urge your support of this bill.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition?
Good afternoon. Bill Higgins from the League of California Cities. We're opposed to this bill for a couple of reasons. The first is we're not sure what in the housing element, which is where we're going to cite houses at a very general level, how that relates to the issue of developmentally disabled adults. Is it the location of our houses, or is it what's inside our houses has to meet their demands, in which case that's a building standards issue and an ADA issue, not a housing element issue. More concerning in these hard economic times is who's going to pay for this. This is a mandate. This is a new requirement that local agencies are going to have to do. So that this is passed through as a non-mandate issue because we can impose fees. We ask, who can we impose the fees on? Certainly it's not the community that you represent. So we're going to have to pass that on to somebody. Is it the building? Is it the builders? Because if it is, we're getting pressure from many people in this legislature to keep our fees low when we impose fees. So we're fine with, we know that these populations have special needs. I'm just not sure how this bill fixes that problem, and it certainly doesn't fix local finance issues at a time when we're laying off our planning departments because our planning departments are funded by developer fees and nobody's building. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on to other witnesses, we do have a photographer that has asked permission to photograph during parts of the hearing, which we have agreed to without objection from the committee. All right. Very good. And that actually allows me to introduce Assemblymember Sandre Swanson, who is serving, filling the vacancy. He's getting it now, so whether you're allowed it or not. You got one right there. You know, and actually, all right, real quick again, now we have the opportunity. We would like to establish a quorum. If we could please call the roll.
Smythe.
Here.
Smythe here. Caballero. Arambula. Bradford. He's here. Bradford here. Davis. Knight. Here. Knight here. Logue. Logue here. Solorio. Swanson.
Swanson here.
Swanson here.
Thank you. If I may just finish up, if there are any other witnesses in opposition, we finished up there. Thank you. Questions, Mr. Swanson?
Yes, I just thank the senator for the bill, and I would just ask. So, what would your response be to that question?
Yeah, thank you. And since we already have a motion, I guess is in the context of a close after the motion. But all the bill says is that local governments prepare their general plans, and there's a housing element. And as they prepare these going forward, take into consideration the needs of people with developmental disabilities. That can be inventorying the housing that is available to individuals today. It can be assessing what the needs are for the population that exists and will grow in the future. It can be the proximity of housing to other services, transportation, shopping, the kind of medical and support services that individuals need. The mandate or the requirement under this is quite flexible. It only says take it into consideration. I think League of Cities obviously concerned about yet another requirement, but this is such a modest requirement, and I think it's what they would want to do in considering the housing needs in the community anyway. And so with that in mind, I would ask for your consideration.
Thank you. Any other questions for the witnesses? Thank you. Senator, are you that's comfortable with that being your close?
That's it.
All right. Mr. Logue, are you still prepared to make your motion? Okay. Mr. Knight, thank you. We do have a motion and a second then. Please call the roll.
The motion is do pass and we refer to the Committee on Housing and Community Development. Smythe.
Aye.
Smythe, aye. Caballero. Arambula. Bradford. Aye. Bradford, aye. Davis. Knight. Aye. Knight, aye. Logue. Logue, aye. Solorio. Swanson.
Swanson, aye.
Swanson.
The measure is out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And before we move on to our next presenter, if we take a motion for the consent calendar. We do have a motion second on consent, and the consent calendar consists of items number 6, SB 902 by Senator Ashburn, item number 8, SB 1019, Senator Correa, Item number 11, SB 1042, Senator Walters. Item number 13, SB 1344, Senator Kehoe. And item number 14, SB 1458 by Senator Cogdill. Please call the roll.
Smythe?
Aye.
Smythe, aye. Caballero, Arambula, Bradford? Bradford, aye. Davis, Knight? Knight, aye. Logue? Logue, aye. Solorio? Swanson? Swanson, aye.
Thank you. That consent calendar is passed. Now on item number, I believe it is number 9, SB 1023 by Senator Wiggins. Ms. Evans will be presenting on her behalf, and that bill does have support on both sides.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it is a very simple bill. It simply allows but does not mandate a voluntary streamlined process for local officials who want to convert resort improvement districts and municipal improvement districts into community services districts. I have Mr. Donald Ridenour from the Department of Public Works from the County of Napa here to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Witt.
I just wanted to briefly say I'm also here as the district engineer representing Napa Berryessa Resort Improvement District and the Lake Berryessa Resort Improvement District, and we do support this bill and think that this bill will allow us to convert to community service districts in a much more streamlined and efficient fashion and bring the laws and regulations that govern these districts kind of up to date. And I'm here to answer any questions if you so choose.
Great. Thank you. Any other witnesses in support?
Iris Herrera with the California Special Districts Association in support of the bill. Just want to thank the staff and author for their hard work on this bill. It's been a very thorough and inclusive process. We represent community services districts and also MIDs and RIDs. They've all been informed about this bill and the process and are all in support of it as well. And also been asked to convey the California Association of LAFCO's continued support for the bill as well.
Great. Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Hearing none. Questions from the committee? Would you like to close?
Ask or I vote.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the bill? Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Ms. Caballero, please call the roll.
Motion is due pass. Smythe?
Aye.
Smythe, aye. Caballero? Caballero, aye. Rambula? Bradford? Bradford, aye. Davis? Knight? Knight, aye. Logue? Logue, aye. Solorio? Swanson? Swanson, aye. Solorio, aye.
That measure is out as well. Senator Lowenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. SB 454 is on housing preservation. Over the last 4 decades, nonprofits and for-profit developers have built over 425,000 units of affordable housing in California. These developers receive public subsidies in exchange for agreeing to maintain the affordability of the units for some period of time. Usually that period of time ranges somewhere between 30 and 55 years, depending upon the program. When the time expires after that period, the owners are eligible to convert these developments to market rate apartments. Given the ongoing shortage of affordable housing in California and the fact that it's much cheaper to maintain existing housing rather than to construct new housing, we try to preserve the affordability in any way we can. In an arrangement worked out over the years with property owners, current law facilitates preservation by requiring owners to give tenants and government entities notice of a potential conversion 1 year prior to converting. This 1 year time frame conforms and is coordinated with similar federal law, so we are in conformity. During this 1 year period, current law also provides preservation purchasers, those committed to maintaining affordability, with limited priority to purchase the property if the owner is inclined to sell. The law, however, does not obligate the owner to sell at all and maintains the right of the owner to convert the units to market rate rentals or to sell with no strings attached once the 1 year period is over. In light of the fact that over 80,000 units will be eligible for conversion in the near future, and that the law has worked to preserve precious affordable housing, and that there's no controversy surrounding this law, What SB 454 does is to eliminate the 2010 sunset. It also makes one change requested by the Apartment Association to ensure that the owners of primarily market rate developments do not have to disclose proprietary financial information. SB 454 is supported by both affordable housing advocates and the California Apartment Association. There is no opposition to this bill. This bill received unanimous vote in the Senate, and I urge your aye vote.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Witnesses in support, please.
Good afternoon, Brian Augusta on behalf of the California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation. Well, I think the Senator's closing remarks indicate that our presentation should probably be short, but I would just say, echo one thing that he said, which is this bill brings together willing buyer and willing seller in an effort to preserve badly needed affordable housing and preserve existing subsidies, and it's worked when buyer and seller get together. We're pleased to have worked out some amendments with the Apartment Association so that we can all be here together and urge that we remove the sunset and keep this important program moving.
Right. Thank you. Next witness.
Rob Weiner with California Coalition for Rural Housing, one of the co-sponsors of this bill. This law has served as a early warning system for the last 20 years or so to provide local governments, low-income tenants, nonprofit organizations, and the state with a heads up whenever a federal subsidy is going to be terminated. You need at least a year in order to come up with a preservation strategy to preserve these units and to provide alternative accommodations for the low-income residents. So this is common sense legislation, and we've been able to achieve agreement with the apartment owners, and we urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deborah Carlton with the California Apartment Association. We appreciate the amendments that the author has taken on our behalf, and we're here in support of the bill.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Seeing none, witnesses in opposition? Questions from the committee? We do have a motion and a second. Senator, if you'd like to close.
I urge your aye vote.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
The motion is due pass and re-refer to the Committee on Housing and Community Development. Smythe.
Aye.
Smythe, aye. Caballero. Caballero, aye. Rambula. Bradford. Bradford, aye. Davis. Knight. Knight, aye. Logue. Logue, aye. Solorio. Solorio, aye. Swanson.
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, aye. Bill.
Thank
That
you.
measure is out. Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Good luck in conference committee. Our, I believe next in the online is Senator Liu. Item number 4, SB 878.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members. I ask for your support on SB 878. This is a district bill to help prevent property sale fraud and protect homeowners and renters in Los Angeles County. The bill is sponsored by the LA Board of Supervisors, County Board of Supervisors, and the bill has extensive support from consumer groups and law enforcement, and there is no opposition. When the county records a notice of default or notice of sale for a home, the property resident will receive a timely notice in the mail. Residents will know that a home is being sold, foreclosed on, or is possibly involved in a fraudulent transaction. The home foreclosure crisis has unfortunately created opportunities for more fraud, as well as suddenly displacing renters who had no idea that the house they occupy was in foreclosure. The County Real Estate Fraud / Predatory Lending Task Force last year made a series of recommendations, including this legislative proposal. Default notices filed with the county increased from about 21,000 in 2003 to nearly 106,000 in 2009. This legislation builds upon successful fraud prevention statutes already adopted by LA County whenever a property deed has changed, and I ask for your support on this bill.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Other witnesses in support?
Yes, Chairman Smythe, members of the committee, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Senate Bill 878. My name is Rigo Reyes. I'm the acting director of the County of Los Angeles Department of Consumer Affairs. And with me is Tim Bissell, our Chief Deputy Director. We are in strong support of this bill. Los Angeles County has operated the homeowner notification program since 1996. And under this program, homeowners are notified when a deed, grant deed, or quitclaim deed is recorded. This gives homeowners the opportunity to review a copy of the recorded document, alerts them to forgeries and false documents, and tells them to contact the Department of Consumer Affairs if they need assistance. The homeowner notification is an important and successful program in fighting real estate fraud. Last year, nearly 450,000 notifications were mailed, and our department assisted more than 25,000 homeowners each year. Homeowners strongly support the program. A survey card is sent with every notification, and more than 99% of the homeowners who return the card approve of the program. We have samples of more than 28,000 survey cards returned last year. All of them are very favorable. SB 878 will enhance this popular and successful program by notifying homeowners and tenants when a notice of default and a notice of sale is recorded. This notification is desperately needed, we believe, because frauds against homeowners in foreclosure have risen dramatically in the last 2 years. In 2007, for instance, our department received only 44 complaints against fraudulent foreclosure consultants and loan modification scams. In 2009, that number increased to 565 complaints. Providing notification to homeowners who have received a notice of default or sale, we believe will reduce foreclosure fraud and give homeowners and tenants the information and assistance they need as they work to save their homes. We thank you and appreciate your support for this important initiative and that will help homeowners and their families save their homes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next witness.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members. Lieutenant Wayne Billowit on behalf of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and, at the moment, the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. In LA County, we operate the Real Estate Fraud Task Force. This bill would be incredibly helpful to us. We strongly urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? And none witnesses in opposition? Seeing none. Questions from the committee? Yes. One comment.
No question, just a comment. I wanted to thank you very much for bringing this bill forward. This is incredibly important, and I know that there's so much fraud out there around these, the foreclosure and the rental. People that are renting units are caught right in the middle, and so I think it's a very, very good idea, and we'll recommend you for doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator, if you'd like to close.
Just ask for your support on the bill, please.
All right, thank you. I believe we have a motion in a second. We do. Thank you. Please call the roll.
The motion is due pass. Smythe.
Aye.
Smythe, aye. Caballero. Caballero, aye. Rambula. Bradford.
Aye.
Bradford, aye. Davis.
Aye.
Davis, aye. Knight.
No.
Knight, no. Logue. Logue, no. Solorio. Swanson.
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, aye. The bill's.
The measure's up.
Thank you.
Next, I believe we have Senator Kehoe, item number 12.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.
Hello, Senator. Thank you. Please.
Okay, I'll begin on SB 1207. Members, this has to do with fire planning and the safety elements. And of course, what brought this bill to mind was the devastating wildfires California has been dealing with since 2003 in the case of San Diego, when we had an enormous fire there. And several years later, we had another 100-year fire. It was only 3 years had passed. Right now, the state is spending about $1 billion a year, members, on fire suppression. Much of it is it is emergency spending that goes far beyond the scope and budget of CAL FIRE. And particularly troubling is the fact that this figure will probably only grow since fire scientists speculate, or really research points to the fact that drought, climate change, and continued development in state responsibility areas and high fire hazard severity zones will only raise the price of continuing our fight against wildfires and the cost of losses due to those wildfires. Given these expenses, it's essential that local government begin planning for fire hazards as early as possible in the planning process. The bill requires local governments to review and revise the safety elements of their general plans by January 1, 2015. That'd be a full 4 years after enactment, and periodically thereafter to include information about local fire hazards in their state responsibility areas and in their very high fire hazard severity zones. That information would include mapping data, goals, and policies. The language is similar to information that's already required for flood planning in safety elements. The bill also requires the Governor's Office of Planning and Research to update its fire hazard planning document on or before January 1, 2012. Locals can use this document in their planning, but it has not been updated since before the 2003 fires. In addition, it requires OPR in consultation with CAL FIRE to update the model initial study checklist. The bill can save lives and property down the road. It can also ease the burden on the both state and local governments through early, consistent, and meaningful fire hazard planning statewide. As the American Planning Association points out in their support letter, the measure just makes sense. It includes measures that cities and counties should currently be doing to address fire hazards in the state responsibility area. I'm happy to say the bill's supported by Cal Fire Chiefs Association, California Professional Firefighters, Fire Districts Association of California, California State Firefighters Association, the American Planning Association of California, League of Cities, Sierra Club, and others. I would ask for your aye vote.
I move the bill.
Thank you, members.
Motion and second. And then just before we go to Witness Center, if you could maybe in your close or the other points kind of address the governor's veto of your legislation last year, and hope that and how that can be addressed in with this legislation, or if one of your witnesses want to tackle that too. But that's, I think, a question from the committee. Witnesses in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Ralph Hine for the California Fire Chiefs and Fire Districts Association. As Senator Kehoe said, this really is a front-end planning process, and in the reports that were issued after the most recent catastrophic fires, the recommendations from all of the fire professionals and legislators that participated in those reports was the areas in state responsibility areas and high fire severity zones need the kind of planning that this bill provides. And the key to that planning is prevention. That's what the bill is all about, prevention. We're very much in support of the bill, and I'll take a quick shot at the governor's veto in terms of costs specifically. As the League of Cities pointed out in their support letter, this process could actually save local governments and the state significant revenues, and we hope this year to convince the governor of that fact.
Thank you. The witnesses.
Sandy George, representing the American Planning Association. We agree. We actually worked on this language, and it was kind of a composite of all of the best plans that we have seen at the local level. We do think it would save us money in the long run, but one key difference between this bill and some of the other bills that have the local government fee disclaimer in it is that we can actually collect the fees from the property owners that are going to be benefiting from these plans over time, and that does allow us to actually recoup our costs. So we appreciate that amendment, and we hope the governor would appreciate that as well.
Thank you. Vargas.
Thank you very much. My name is Afrak Vargas. I'm with the California State Firefighters Association. I don't have to tell this committee or this body the situation that our cities, our local fire departments, our districts are in terms of their budgets, in terms of the economy. Our firefighters are giving back in negotiations to keep fire stations open. The fact of the matter is that we do desperately need this bill. There are certain areas in California that are more fire prone, that are not being responsible, and they're actually taking advantage of other fire departments and other resources, and that's just absolutely not fair, and that's why this bill is desperately needed. We would respectfully ask an aye vote.
Thank you. The witness in support.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Christy Baumer representing the California Professional Firefighters, also pleased to be in support of this bill. I'll echo the comments of Mr. Vargas, and if we as a country continue to want to leave our hinterlands open for development and people want to go live far away from urban centers and they have the expectation that services will be brought to them, then we need to have planning in place so that is an option instead of just trying to defend fires that are indefensible in some of these areas. So we're in support.
Thank you. Anyway, any other witnesses in support? Just adding their Me Too's. Witnesses in opposition?
Thanks, Ron. Appreciate it. Hello again.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Karen Keene here on behalf of the California State Association of Counties. We are opposed. We do not have any problems with the policy components of the bill. Our opposition is purely based on the fact that it's a mandate. We do not think we can recoup our costs with the fee proposed in the bill. Our members indicate that this requirement could cost them in the thousands of dollars, depending on the type of amendment and type of hearing process that they would have to go through to meet the components of the bill. So for those reasons, we are opposed. Thank you.
Members of the committee, Kathy Mannion, Regional Council of Rural Counties, also here in opposition for the reasons stated by my colleague from CSAC. We did work long and hard with the author on the policy components of the bill, and again, our opposition is based on the fiscal component. Thank you.
Mr. Lynch.
Tim Lynch on behalf of the San Bernardino County Board of Supervisors, echoing those comments and just providing a specific example. We think it could be, depending on, again, the scope, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to update our specific housing element to accommodate these issues that we've already addressed in fire code.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition? I'm sorry, if I could have the witness from the rural counties. I guess if you could just address, because obviously the rural areas are some ones that are getting most significantly hit, and so I guess the question is how do you kind of square that when those counties are really get hit by these fires, and yet still kind of opposing legislation like that. If you could maybe get in a little more depth of your opposition.
Well, as far as the policy goes, we spent considerable time with the author and the other opponents at that time working through the policy issues, so we feel very comfortable with that at this point in time. The component relates to the fees, where the bill states that we can recoup our costs. We do not see that as being a realistic source of funding. Where we might be able to charge some fees, it's certainly, we are told by our member counties, will not cover the costs that would be involved, because it is involved, the number of things that the counties will have to do in response to the legislation. But again, the policy issues have been addressed.
Okay. Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition? I didn't mean to cut off that testimony. Thank you. Questions from the committee? Okay. Oh, yes, Mr. Logue.
Go ahead. Well, the only question I had is I wondered if Senator Keough could answer the issue that was raised by the counties in regards to the fees and that particular issue. Because
it's thank you, Assemblymember Caballero. Believe me, I'm sympathetic. I come from local government, not a county, but I served on the city council for 7 years, and the bill allows the counties or the local jurisdictions 4 years to get to revamp their general plan under this bill. We know the counties are stretched thin. I'm asking you to weigh costs on balance, because currently locals and the state are spending hundreds of millions of dollars annually suppressing fires. In fact, the League of Cities in their support letter pointed out when one jurisdiction sends firefighters to another, they are under mutual aid. They are reimbursed for direct costs, but not for many indirect costs, such as overtime and workers' compensation. No matter how expensive the planning is, members, it's far less expensive than fighting a fire under emergency situation. So if Mr. Heim wants to add on the locals' options on fees, I welcome the support.
Through the chair, very briefly, I think, Assemblywoman Caballero, the current law affords all local jurisdictions to recoup the actual costs of their service, and we believe that the county certainly could do that under those current statutory provisions.
Mr. Logue?
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
It's just a matter of, I hate to say it, pay me now or pay me later. And I do believe this is not intended to be punitive. Some counties are doing this, but we need a statewide benchmark to make it an even playing field and to reinforce our mutual aid system members, which, as you know, if you're talking to your firefighters, is frayed now to the tearing point. The cities and some jurisdictions versus others just simply are reaching the point where they cannot participate already at the level that they used to several years ago, and may not be able to participate at all in coming years unless we start to reduce some of these costs.
Unless there are any other questions, we can take that as your close, Senator
Yes,
Kehoe.
you may. Thank you.
We will look for a motion on the bill.
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval. I think this bill is confirmation of the wisdom of the adage, what is it, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
I think it's been moved already.
Mr. Rambler moves.
No, it was moved.
We moved in second.
I moved it and he seconded
So you're the new guy, so we never, there's a, all right. So we have lots of motions, lots of seconds, so
Yes.
we are covered.
Mr. Davis, thank you for calling. Thanks, Rob.
We're covered. And, please go ahead and call the roll then.
The motion is do pass and re-refer to the Committee on Natural Resources. Smythe.
Aye.
Smythe, aye. Caballero. Caballero, aye. Arambula. Arambula, aye. Bradford.
Aye.
Bradford, aye. Davis.
Aye.
Davis, aye. Knight.
No.
Knight, no. Logue. Solorio. Swanson.
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, aye. Bill's out.
The measure's up.
Thank you very much for your support, members.
Thank you. Thank you.
I thought you'd go for your firefighter brothers. Thank you.
All right, next item, Mr. Nilo.
It's okay, man.
Come on up. Mr. Nilo is presenting item number 5 and number 7 for Senator Cox. We can take item 5 first.
Is that SB 879?
It is. Then we will do that. Item number 5, SB 879. Just give us a second for the transition here.
Okay, I think we
Mr.
have
Nilo.
everybody in their places.
All right, let's do it.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I am presenting SB 879 for Senator Cox. This bill extends counties' authorities to use design-build contracting method for 5 years. Their current authority, unfortunately, expires at the end of this year, absent this legislation. It makes some technical changes to conform the county's authority with the authority that cities have to use design-build. The bill gives counties a tool that they can use if they believe that it's applicable in a way to save time and money on construction projects. The counties have been using design-build for the last 10 years. They all wish to extend it because of the flexibility and because of its unquestioned success. So at least on their behalf and also on Senator Cox's behalf, I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. And again, we are limiting to 3 witnesses, 3 primary witnesses, and the rest will be me too. So however you choose to allocate that, please.
Mr. Chair, members, Mark Smith on behalf of the American Council of Engineering Companies of California here in support of this bill today. You know, as I was walking around and working on these issues the last couple of days, somebody asked me, we talk a lot about design build. It seems like we're always having bills on this issue, and I would submit to you there are 2 reasons for that, and you are seeing both of them today in this bill and the one following. One is we insist on putting a sunset on design build, regardless of how effective it is and regardless of what the reviews and reports say about its use at the city and county level. And the other is we authorize design build on a piecemeal basis. So we authorize design build for a particular facility, and then a additional facility sees the success and wants to come before you to get authority for itself. You'll see that in the second bill. In regards to this bill, design build for vertical structures is not a contested issue anymore. The LAO issued a report several years back which demonstrates the effectiveness and the flexibility of this project delivery method, as Mr. Nilo stated. They made several recommendations that were included in this bill, including reducing the overall cap on the project price of those types of projects that would qualify for the use of design build. And again, we've discussed removing the sunset. We've extended it twice now. You will continue to see these bills in front of you on a regular basis if we continue to put sunsets in them. So we think, the reports are in. The verdict has been handed down. Design build is a proven technology for vertical structures, and we would ask that you continue this authority for counties. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Alan Fernandez on behalf of San Diego County as well as others. I just want to address 3 points, one of which Mark touched on, and that is the sunset. I would hearken back to the fact that this law sunsets at the end of this year. Prior to the sunset, a report was due by LAO. They did that report. LAO's recommendation was both to eliminate the threshold and the sunset because design build has proven to be an effective practice if implemented properly. This bill simply doesn't do that, however. This bill simply aligns the threshold limit to the same as the cities. I would argue that the city of LA and the sophistication and the types of projects that they undertake is a little bit different scale from the county of Alpine, where the threshold limit currently for the county of Alpine would be $2.5 million. And so at a minimum, we believe that certainly an extension of the sunset is warranted, as Mark described. Secondly, that the threshold limit for counties should at least align to the same threshold limit for cities. From the San Diego County's perspective, we have 2 projects currently that we are using design build for, and several others that we are looking to use design build for. If you reduce the sunset from less than what's currently in the bill, I will tell you that it will have an impact on planning for counties. And so what we would argue is simply that there has been a report. LAO has made recommendations. We don't even reach as far as LAO's recommendations in this bill. We believe that this is an appropriate middle ground, and we'd urge our support of the bill.
Mr. Chairman, other members, Paul Yoder, Scheuder, Antwi, here today on behalf of Stanislaus, Solano, Fresno, Kern, and really all our counties who are in favor of design build authority and the extension of the authority. The thing I want to emphasize today is that our counties have worked successfully with the local trades. And there's a way to do this where it is cheaper to the taxpayer. Things do get built faster, and like I said, there is a way to work with local trades so that this is beneficial for really everybody locally. So I'd urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Yes, Leslie McFadden, Sacramento County Board of Supervisors. We've used it twice. It works. Urge your support of the extension. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, just the add-ons in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Mark Christian with the American Institute of Architects, California Council in support.
And Mr. Chairman, Dave Ackerman representing the Associated General Contractors in support.
Jim Lights representing the California Airports Council, a new group of 30 commercial airports in the state. We don't have a formal position, but a couple of our individual members have successfully used the existing law authority that this bill seeks to extend and found it to be very effective.
Thank you.
Steve Wallach on behalf of the Alameda County Board of Supervisors, also strongly supportive of this bill. Urge your support.
Kathy Mannion, Regional Council of Rural Counties, also here in support. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Kyle Packham with the California Special Districts Association in support. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Bo Biller on behalf of the Design Build Institute of America, the Western Chapter, and the County of San Bernardino, also in support.
Holly Firmini on behalf of the Orange County Board of Supervisors in support.
Noel Maddock with CH2M Hill in support of this bill.
Good afternoon. Thomas Vu with the California Chamber of Commerce in support.
Kiana Buss with the California State Association of Counties, also in support.
Julian DeVos with the Urban Counties Caucus, also in support.
Michael Radigan on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, Santa Clara County, in support.
Believe that and in support. Thank you. Witnesses in opposition.
Oh, I didn't think there were any.
Mr. Chairman,
They're coming just because you're presenting the bill, Roger.
Mr. Chairman and Member Scott Wetch, on behalf of the California State Pipe Trades Council, the State Association of Electrical Workers, the Western States Council of Sheet Metal Workers, and the Elevator Constructors Union. I'm not going to go into all the issues and problems we have to design build, but I want to focus on one particular issue, two particular issues of concern, and I hope the members would pay close attention. The threshold, I rue the day that we ever agreed to dropping the threshold for cities. Dropping the threshold in design build eliminates the ability of small businesses, minority-owned and women-owned contractors from even participating in the process for this reason. When you agree to do a project design build, you are agreeing that you're going to go in and design that project up front as part of your bid. Usually 33% of the project you have to design up front. That means as a contractor, A, you have to be big enough so you have a design division within your company, which most small contractors do not have. Or secondly, you have to be sophisticated enough to go out to an architect and partner with that architect, agree to share the risk of the bid process, and then go and bid. But here's the real kicker, and this is why it eliminates their ability to participate. That costs a lot of money. A lot of small contractors who employ my members, their bread and butter is doing small public works projects, $1 million, $1.5 million, and they may go out and bid 12 of those projects knowing that they're going to get one or two, hopefully, to keep the food on the table. If now you require them to do it design build, they don't have the capitalization to do that. They can't invest. When we did the East End project, the cost of bidding that project under design build was $1 million per bidder. They had shortlisted that to 5 bidders. 4 bidders spent over $1 million and didn't get the job. So by requiring small projects of $1 million, I would suppose that when we remodeled this very committee room, it was more than $1 million, and this isn't a big job. Small, minority-owned, women-owned, undercapitalized contractors who live on these small public works projects simply cannot afford to bid multiple projects, and you eliminate them from the process. The sunset date. LAO identified both some good things about design build and some issues of concern with design build, not all of which have been addressed. We need to have a comprehensive revisiting of design build. It is not going to happen at this time. We cannot live with a sunset date of 5 years. We think that 3 years would be responsible. 2.5 years around in that figure would be something that we could live with. We can't live with the 5 years, and we certainly cannot live with lowering the threshold from $2.5 million to $1 million for these county projects. For those reasons, we urge a no vote.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, Steve Baker with Aaron Reed and Associates representing the professional engineers in California government. PEG's review of design build shows that this procurement methodology doesn't work in theory and doesn't work in practice. It eliminates competitive bidding on its face. It just eliminates it. It is a very subjective bidding system where the contractor can pick and choose who they want to have to get the job. It eliminates public inspection. That said, our position on this bill is oppose unless amended. We have found that with the existing authority, cities and counties are self-reporting the requirements of the bill, whether it was cost-effective, how they did their procurement methodology. In just looking at the things where they've self-reported, we've seen some problems based on our review of that. In Stanislaus County, they said that their swimming pool came under budget at $2.5 million. However, the preliminary cost of that same project was $1.3 million. So they say they saved money, but it was $1.2 million over their original estimate. Similar problems in Solano County. They said they saved money on their social services building that cost $27 million. Local news report said that the cost was actually $38 million. We think that this bill needs to be amended so that there's some actual independent review and oversight of these projects so that cities and counties can be held accountable. We certainly agree with Mr. Wetch on the threshold issue and the sunset issue. For those reasons, we'd ask for a no vote unless the bill's amended.
Thank you. Before the next witness, sir, Mr. Solario would like to ask a couple questions. He's got to run to committee, so.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I do have to go to Senate Insurance to present 4 bills and wanted to make some statements.
You have 4 bills still alive, Solario?
4 bills, believe it or not.
Can you tell me what that's like?
Some are committee bills.
That's interesting. I'd like to know what that's like. But
you're a chair now, so you know what it's like to be a committee chair.
All right, I'll work on that.
You know, I have some hesitations with this bill and the next one as they're written. But this bill with some amendments, I would be willing to support. I know we don't like to in this committee do amendments on the fly, but if I had the author's commitment at some point before I come back and vote, I'd be willing to consider voting for it. First, I like the threshold as it is for the reasons mentioned by Mr. Wetch. We don't want to hurt minority and small business owners. 2, in terms of the sunset. I'd propose something, 3-4 years out, maybe 3.5, like July of 2014. And then with respect to additional analysis, right now the LAO in this bill is asked to do some additional analysis. I'd like to beef that up so that they do a little bit more fact-based analysis and follow-up if they have questions with the data that comes in. The LAO itself, so we just beef up that section of the bill so the LAO is still doing the analysis. And then in terms of the report, because we're changing the sunset time frame, the report being due by the LAO by January 1st of 2014. So, having spoken to some of the folks and read about this, I'd be willing to support the bill along those lines. Again, unfortunately, I do have to leave right now, but just wanted to give you some food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Plote.
Mr. Chairman and members, Willie Plote, represent American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. I don't want to be redundant, so I agree with both of the previous witnesses. And I also agree with Senator Solario. If the author is prepared to take those amendments, it does indeed give us some of a comfort level. We don't like design bill, just be very clear with you. We don't like putting small businesses out of business who supply the jobs for the people in the state of California. And that gives you a general fund by which to provide services. We don't like design bill because it eliminates competitive bidding. But we can get a comfort level if those amendments are taken. And then what we will do as we move forward, because I have another 5 years, we hope to kill design bills once and for all by the time it comes back around to the sunset. It's bad for California, it's bad for the public, and it's bad for everything that happens in this great state.
Thank you. Any more?
Other than that, what do you think? I don't know where we are.
Any other witnesses in opposition? Bringing down questions from the committee. Mr. Davis and Mr. Swanson.
Well, I guess I agree with Member Solario. If those 4 issues are taken seriously, I could support design bill. I am not totally against design bill to the degree that I know it allows to generate work more expeditiously in many regards. But at the same time, our core value has to be that while we are providing relief for counties, we also must provide relief for our working citizens. And so that our goal of inclusion can't go out the window because we're providing relief to the counties. In other words, certainly our core values have to be that small businesses and minority businesses get an equal opportunity in this design bill. There is no provision, I guess, in this proposal to make that happen. So, as we talk about this bill here today, the issue of the 3-year sunset, the threshold, trying to decrease it to 1 million probably gives us less of an opportunity if we could have it stay at the 2.5 million. If we look at the inclusion of the LAO and the analysis and that the report for January 1st to 2014, then I could support it under those conditions. And again, my issue is our core value of not making sure that we include both small businesses and the minority businesses that certainly ought to be a part of what we do. that we want to make sure that we don't have a proposal on the table that annihilates that possibility. But if we could do that, I certainly would support it.
Mr. Davis, you mentioned 4 items, and I believe what Assemblyman Solario talked about was the threshold, the dollar threshold, the sunset, and a bit of enhanced LAO review. Did I miss
the other
the
one
4th?
was the limit to 3 years of sunset.
Yeah, that's threshold, sunset.
The 2.5 million instead of 1 million.
Right.
And then the inclusion of the LAO and the analysis, and then the report due back to the legislature 2014.
Oh, so those you're counting the LAO pieces as 2 items.
Okay, gotcha. Sorry about that.
Mr. Swanson.
Yes. So
here we are again.
Here we are. Yeah. I'm just giving you a chance to respond to the proposal.
But before we do that, if Mr. Bradford, if your question, if we get your
That's my
question in
question.
too,
That
so
was pretty much where I was too, as it relates to the amendments.
fair enough. Any other questions then, and we can then let the author. If we don't. All right. So then, Mr. Nilo, I know it is not your bill, but if you can try to do your best to answer the questions posed by the committee.
It's not my bill, but many people know here that this is an issue I've worked on extensively since I've been in the institution, so it's certainly not foreign to me. And I want to stress, this is very important policy. I cannot overemphasize the significance of this tool. You have seen that every county in this state is pleading with you to extend this flexibility to them. CSAC, RCRC, individual counties were here, special districts were here. I want to stress this is extremely important, and that's important in terms of how I address these issues. First of all, with regard to the threshold, Senator Cox doesn't have a problem with that. The fact of the matter is design-build jobs are generally bigger jobs, and I don't know what the city's experience is, but excuse me, it may be that they don't have that many design-build jobs between $1 million and $2.5 million. But be that as it may, the more flexibility, the better. We'd like to coincide it with cities, but I think the $2.5 million threshold is very workable. To ask for some increased review on behalf of the LAO, I think is perfectly reasonable. It's something that they're already doing, and wouldn't be a significant increase in their workload, if anything, even measurable. And specifying the review date is fine. The sunset, though, is difficult, and I'd like to address that. Well, first of all, I feel compelled to address this issue of the effect on small businesses and the criticism of the supposed complete elimination of competitive bidding. First of all, there is nothing in design build that compromises small businesses. Small business, unless you're dealing with real small projects, small businesses are not the general contractors. They're hired by the general contractors. That's the case whether it's design build or whether it's design bid build. So if you have that problem, you're going to have that problem anyway. And I would point out that in the LAO report, in Alameda County, they were able to actually exceed their goals of their small local minority and women-owned business outreach program. And by the way, I would point out that counties have been, local governments really have been the driver of this policy. In Sacramento County, we had policies called MeBe-Weebe. I love that acronym, but it's minority-owned, women-owned businesses. But it's pervasive throughout the state. And frankly, as I said, it is driven really by local governments. And their ability, Alameda's ability, to exceed their goals with regard to a particular job in the LAO report was at least partially enabled by the very flexibility that design build gives to them in the contracting process. So this fear that somehow design build equates to the wholesale failure of small businesses up and down the state it flies in the face of facts, and frankly, it just doesn't make sense if you understand the process. One other point also with regard to competitive bidding. Contracting laws in this state had become far too restrictive and extremely narrow in their execution because of this overriding fear of fraud, which did exist many years past. And as is often the case in legislation, we overreact to things. And so we adopted this very tight process of competitive bidding where we can only go with the low price. Doesn't matter what the quality is, it's just got to be the low price. And governments, especially local governments, began to discover, you know, there is a value component to bidding, which, by the way, the private sector never lost track with. That's one of the things why I have a difficult time getting my head around the concerns of a value-based approach and of design build, because that's the way it's done in the private sector, and that's where I come from. Design build is a process that injects value into the process along with low price and ends up with a product that costs less and takes less time. And that's been proven time and again. But
excuse me, Mr. Swanson, you had a
right. Okay.
Sure.
So, question on the 3-year.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to get to now.
So I thought you said no. I thought I heard no.
I said I have a problem with it, but I wanted to cover 2 other points first. I just did that, so I'll come back to the sunset now. Let me speak to that if I can.
No, I was gonna, maybe I should ask my question, then you can include it. So if the bill failed, and then on reconsideration, would you be willing to consider a sunset question?
Well, let me mention the problem with the sunset, and perhaps I might persuade you that 5 years makes more sense, or something certainly longer than.
I was just listening to what my colleague said 3, and
understand.
People said 3. I'm just wondering if it fit. Okay.
Right. As I said, this is very important policy. I want this bill to succeed, but we're dealing with construction projects that take planning. And as I said, design build is really more applicable to larger projects, and it's not applicable to all projects. It's a tool of flexibility that counties feel is very important, but there is a planning process involved. And the shorter the time frame that counties can rely upon the tool being available, the more it restricts their flexibility in pursuing it. And that's why, excuse me, that's why 5 years, actually a permanent approval would be much better, but that's why 5 years is important, because when you get much less than 5, you get out just a year or so from the time that we authorize it, and you get into an area where it doesn't even make sense to enter the planning process for it. So you almost, a 5-year sunset almost puts the counties on more like a 2 to 3 year sunset because of the planning horizon on these projects. That's why the sunset is extremely important. So again, I want the bill to succeed, but you get much less than 5 and it becomes unworkable, or certainly much less flexible.
And I know Mr. Welch has come back. I mean, I'm pleased. This is an important issue. So if I'll bend the rules a little bit to allow for a little more debate. So, Mr. Welch, if you'd like to comment,
maybe I can provide a little clarity on that. I disagree with the author. First of all, they're talking sort of outside through both sides of their mouth on that, because on one they say they need the authority to do design build so they can get them done faster, so they can design it at the same time that they build it. So if that's why you need design build, then you really don't need the authority to start designing it. The time frame shouldn't be the issue. But the way that the sunset works is, once you bid the project, Once the bids are out and accepted, then that project goes forward with the design build. So what the amendment effectively would do, as proposed by Mr. Swanson and Mr. Solorio, would be that projects over the next 3 years that are bid would be able to do design build. To suggest, like the author suggests, that once you're into it by a year, that somehow you're going to be excluded from taking advantage of design build is simply not the case. If you bid a project anytime between now and 2014 July, which is what was proposed by Mrs. Solorio, you could use design build. And on the minority contractor issue, we have over 700, close to 700,000, 500 to, I'll make it broad, 500 to 700,000 licensed general contractors. I would hasten to say that maybe 5% of those are large contractors. Most of them are small contractors. And it's not general contractors. Oftentimes design build is employed, let's say, on a heating and air conditioning system. You want to put a new heating and air conditioning system in the Capitol, $2.5 million. You hire somebody to design the ductwork for you. That's a typical design build project. We're not just talking about building buildings.
Right.
All right. Yeah, hold on. Mr. Nealop?
On Mr. Wetch's
Yes.
second point, I agreed that we'd go with the $2.5 million threshold. On his first point, I'm somewhat surprised because I'm sure he understands the nature of project planning as well as anybody here. It takes projects a long time just to get to the point of asking for the proposals. And the contracting method is an assumed component of that. And he's right, once it gets started, it gets started. But to say that because it gets things done faster and cheaper, but we have a problem with a short time frame seems somehow inconsistent. It's not inconsistent at all because of the actions precedent to actually putting out the job in terms at least of asking for the proposal. So that planning process, especially in the public sector, is extremely important.
Mr. Davis?
I wanted to say that the burden is on both sides of the table. Obviously, there is some need for relief in this economic downturn for counties to be able to expedite, and yet the unforeseen burden that perhaps you don't see from your side of the table is the obligation to include those who have not traditionally been included in construction projects. So where does that leave us? It leaves us at a point in time where, even though it's difficult, the 3 years allows us to build a trust level that counties are going to be alleviated, they're going to be able to expedite projects, and then on the other side of the table, it is going to create an opportunity for those who have traditionally not been included into construction projects to be included in, so that within the 3 years, if we see what your pattern of behavior is and it does not fit what we think it should be to reflect the goals of society, then we have an opportunity to move forward and create or recreate another policy that will allow us to achieve both goals. Both, one, relief for the county, both, two, diversity that reflects more employment opportunities for those in the county that haven't been included in. And so that's why 3 years is uncomfortable, but that is why, in terms of public policy, it is the best answer.
Mr. Bradford? I'm sorry, Mr. if you want to respond to that.
I want to address one thing because it's important. The issue that Mr. Davis thinks that perhaps I don't have a full understanding of, and I want to assure him that I do. And if your concern is the participation in public construction of groups that have been somehow disadvantaged or not included in the past, first of all, that has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with design build. That is an issue that is totally separate and unrelated to that. If that is the case, it's the case with other contracting methods also, because a minority of jobs are done on design build. The vast majority are other methods, particularly design bid build. So I think there's probably other things that need to be addressed in that particular area, but the LAO's report found out that design build can actually provide flexibility to have greater success in that area depending upon the other underlying policies of the county itself. And back to the threshold, what Mr. Solorio suggested was the midway of 2014, which is 3.5 years. We could make this work, given the concerns that I have, if we just moved it out 6 months from there, made it a 4-year sunset, and that would, I think that could work with us if that could win your support.
Mr. Bradford. Oh, sorry.
Well,
you asked a lot of questions for a new guy to the committee. That's all right.
Well, you
came in and get your picture taken, and so
you're gonna invite me back. I think 3 years is an important date, given our form of government. In 3 years, half of us will be gone. So who keeps you honest? So 3 years makes.
Our limits are 6.
Yeah, right. Well, 3 years, half of us is going to be gone. So 3 years certainly makes sense. I think that the three items to be covered here, the LAO 2.5 and the $3 million makes sense, and if that's part of the amendment that goes forward, then the bill goes forward.
Mr. Radford.
Yeah, I appreciate the discussion on both sides of this issue, and all I have to, lean on is my experience as a local elected official and witnessed the Alameda Corridor project. And on concept, design bill makes absolute good sense. But from the experience that what Mr. Davis kind of mentioned about a small business participation, it did not exist on Alameda Corridor. It was not cheaper on Alameda Corridor. It did not come in on time on the Alameda Corridor. And that's my only point of reference that I can refer to. Again, in concept, it makes clear sense, but so far I have not seen the savings neither in time nor money. So in order for me to be in support of this bill, I would think those amendments would have to be part of this bill in order for me to be affirmative on it.
It's unfortunate that you observed that one experience. I'm not familiar with that project, so I don't know what the details are, but I can tell you that the existing evidence of experience for design build in this state and around the country disputes significantly the experience that you articulate for Alameda.
All right. Mr. Rambulat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there's a false dichotomy when we talk about what's good for counties versus what's good for workers or organized labor. Because I think what's good for counties is good for our constituents. We have minorities serving in policy-making positions on county boards of supervisors as well as city councils. And what happens when we save money? There's more money for raises for IHSS workers. There's more money to pay for law enforcement for our constituents. There's more money to go around. So I think as time goes on, more and more of the boards and city councils are going to look like many of the members here on the dais. And I think what this bill does is it gives the option at the local level to determine what's best for constituents. So if we can save money, I'm for it. I'm prepared to support the bill as is, but I understand I can count, and I think Mr. Nilo can count very well. So if you choose to take some of the amendments, I will be supportive of those. If you wish to take your chances with the bill as it is, I will support it. It would be your call. But I think we need to keep in mind that what's good for counties and local government in the long run is good for our people.
Thank you.
We're going to wrap this up with Ms. Caballero, then Mr. Davis, the last question, and then we're going to so Ms. Caballero first, and then you can have the last question, and we'll move on to the vote. Ms. Caballero.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Nilo, the The rules of the committee usually require either that through the chair there are amendments made. That we don't usually allow authors' amendments because we want to see them in writing. It's my recommendation. We have another hearing scheduled. It's my recommendation that you take a minute and speak with Senator Cox and see whether he's likely to consider the recommendations that have been made at this time for amendments that would bring some members on board. At this time, I'm prepared to vote no, but if you would prefer to put it over for another day, I think that might be appropriate. It's my recommendation.
Mr. Swanson?
Yeah, I just...
This is it for everybody.
Boy, you're tough,
I didn't know
Mr.
whether
Chair.
whether the Mr. Solario's original proposal, the 3.5 and the 2.5 and the LAO, is that the amendments that are going to be considered, or is that?
Well, that's what I will speak to. I can do it now.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, Mr. Neal, it is your pleasure as to how we do have, as the vice chair had alluded to, we do have another hearing where we could take this bill up on a vote with those amendments if you want. It is your pleasure. We can move forward today. So.
And you're right, Mr. Chair. This has been a pleasure.
Oh, yes.
And
makes me want to buy a BMW.
Maybe with an electronic display on the rear license plate frame. But I digress. As I stated at the outset, this is extremely important policy, and it is important that we keep it moving. Mr. Solario has indicated he would support with 3 amendments, 2 of which I have already agreed to. I have concerns about the threshold, but we must keep the policy moving. I would agree to, not 3 threshold, the sunset. I would agree to a sunset of the 3.5 years as he proposed, and would anticipate that I would get his support, and will work with him on assurances and others to see that those amendments are made. I have Mr. Cox's approval on whatever it appeared best to do in our best judgment during the hearing. So I would agree to those things. And again, on behalf of all of these counties and special districts that are literally begging to keep this special authority, and Senator Cox and myself, I ask for an aye vote.
So, and again, for the committee, obviously this bill will have to go to approps and then the floor. So there are opportunities that if those amendments are not satisfying, we can pull that back for the other hearings as well. If the committee members do not feel satisfied with that the author has followed through with his commitment, we can bring that back to the committee and deal with it there as well. Ms. Caballero.
I just want to make sure that I'm very clear on this. Is the committee rules require us to have the bill in its final form in front of us. There is time to bring it back. It's my suggestion we do that. But if there's going to be a motion to accept the proposed changes, that's fine. I will be a no because of our committee rules and the way that we work here. We don't have the ability to bring things back if the language is not to our satisfaction. I just want to be very clear. The only way that happens is if leadership gives the nod. We don't have any authority other than it's the reason that the committee rules are set up the way they are. So I just want to be very, very clear on that. We have enough time to bring this back and have it in its final form. It's my preference, but if people want to go ahead, that's fine. So
and this bill is being voted up and down today as is. That's the motion. The motion will be do pass to appropriations as is. So the committee is clear that that's what you're voting on. You've had your discussions with the author, and whether you choose to take that into account or not, that's up to each member. But we're voting on the bill as it is in print today.
Point of clarification.
Yes.
If the bill is taken up as is, the author is going to go into approps with some amendments, right?
That would
now,
be correct.
Vice Chair Caballero is saying that we should probably wait until such time that it's in its final form and there will be no question. But our alternative is, do we trust the author to submit?
Do we trust a car dealer? Is what you're saying.
Wait a minute. I'm not a car dealer. I'm a politician.
Oh, yeah. Do you sell used cars at your lot?
Whatever you would be interested in.
Your mic's off, so it doesn't really matter what you're saying. So again, I'd like to then let's move forward. That again, we're going to take the bill up as is, and let the chips fall where they may with the words. Yes, Mr. Swanson.
It's as is with the specific commitment that the bill would be.
I think Mr. Smythe is talking technically. That is what you're voting on, but you have a commitment from me relative to amendments that will be relative to the ways in which this bill will be amended, 3 ways, or as Mr. Davis articulated it, 4 ways. And I will repeat that again so that everybody knows that we will, if we pass committee today, we will intend to increase the dollar threshold back to the $2.5 million it has been for counties all along. We will have this policy sunset as of July of 2014. We will increase the review of the legislative analyst, and we will ask for their summary report, if you will, by, I believe it was January 1st of 2014.
All right. At this time, we'll take we're going to take the bill up now as a vote. Look for a motion in a second. We have a motion. We have a second. Second from Mr. Arambula. Please call the roll.
The motion is due pass and re-refer to the Committee on Appropriations. Smythe.
Aye.
Smythe, aye. Caballero. Caballero, no. Arambula. Arambula, aye. Bradford. Davis. Davis, aye. Knight. Knight, aye. Logue. Logue, aye. Solorio. Swanson.
That bill is out and move to appropriations.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have another bill for Mr. Cox, I believe?
Yes, I do, and this one will only take twice as long.
And this is item number 7, SB 1005.
Correct, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. It's a very much a related bill.
I'm sorry, Mr. Neal, there are technical amendments that you all want, like a one-word change, so thank you.
We are pleased as punch to take those technical amendments. And this bill is, as I said, related to the other, in fact, really dependent upon the other, because this authority is moot without the prior. SB 1005 will permit 2 healthcare districts to use design build to construct hospital buildings. They will do so under the requirements of the law governing county design build projects, as I just mentioned. We are all aware of the fast approaching deadline for hospitals in California to comply with seismic retrofit requirements by the year 2013. This deadline will be much easier to meet if hospitals that are owned by public health care districts are allowed to complete these projects using the design-build method. Many privately owned and publicly owned hospitals are completing currently their projects this way. As I've said before, design-build is a tool that public agencies have in their toolbox, if you will. It is not appropriate for every project, and local officials certainly should be held accountable for deciding whether to use design-build or not. Senator Cox and I ask that you allow these districts to have this design-build option, and on their behalf and our behalf, I ask for your aye vote.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there is a motion and there's a second. Those in support?
Amber Wiley with the Association of California Healthcare Districts. We are the sponsor of SB 1005. This is a reintroduction of a bill last year that this committee actually did pass out as a much broader version of what is before you today, which essentially would approve design build for 2 district hospitals, one specifically Tahoe Forest Healthcare District in Truckee, who is here to speak on their behalf. District hospitals are the only hospitals without this authorization, giving them a clear disadvantage in meeting the seismic safety standards that all hospitals must meet. One district hospital, Sonoma Valley, was given the authorization in 2008 under a Wiggins bill that That project is about a year underway and has proven to be successful thus far. One last point I would like to make is that all hospitals have to meet the OSHPD seismic safety standards regardless of design build, design bid build, or any other construction method. So these hospitals are just as safe regardless of their construction method. And I would urge your support.
Thank you. Mark Christian with the American Institute of Architects, California Council in Support. What design build allows the architect and the contractor to work together in preparation of the construction documents. It allows collaboration between those who design and those who build, and that does improve the process. This is very important when a building type is very complex, and there's no building type in the world really that is more complex than a California hospital. This is being done in the private sector. You don't see design bid build in the private sector. You see a collaborative process, whether it's design build or another form of collaborative process. You're seeing this already in the public sector. The new university hospital at UC Irvine, the owner UC Irvine, public hospital, design build. The tower replacement at Alameda County Medical Center, Alameda County is the owner. Harbor UCLA Medical Center, owner Los Angeles County, design build. The High Desert Health System Multi-Service Ambulatory Care Center, owner Los Angeles County, design build. This allows hospitals to be built more efficiently, more effectively, because it allows for collaboration. Because it's design build, it does not mean that inspector of records are not there to make sure the public is protected. It does not mean that it's exempt from OSHPD review or OSHPD inspection. All of that takes place. It's greater collaboration, greater efficiency. We ask for your aye vote.
Good afternoon. Maya Schneider, Tahoe Forest Hospital District. Back in 2007, our voters approved a $98 million general obligation bond for campus facility upgrades and seismic compliance projects in our Truckee campus. After 2.5 years of very sophisticated work to determine the best use of those funds, we're ready to move forward. Our board feels a very strong obligation to use those funds in the most effective and efficient manner possible. We believe design build will allow us to do that. We have on our facilities development team our chief of facilities development with over 30 years in the private industry. He has used design build for over 2 decades. Our construction manager is the firm of Janae Gassio, who's done hospital construction projects in Western Nevada and California for, again, another 20 years. We have a lot of experience with design build, and we're ready to save our taxpayers' dollars. We urge your aye vote for this.
Madam Chair and members, Kyle Packham with the California Special Districts Association. We urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, other members, if I may, Paul Yoder, Scheider, Antwi, here to support our local hospital in Truckee on behalf of the Nevada County Board of Supervisors. Urge your aye vote. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chairwoman and members, Mark Smith on behalf of the American Council of Engineering Companies in support. Thank you.
Noel Maddock with CH2M Hill, also in support.
Madam Chair, Bill Biller on behalf of Design Build Institute of America, also in support.
Thomas Vu with the California Chamber of Commerce in support.
Anyone in opposition?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Member Steve Baker with Aaron Reed and Associates, representing the professional engineers in California government. We're opposed to this bill. We don't see any way of fixing this bill. If you think about design build, as you had a discussion on the previous bill, the design entity starts the design and gets to 33% through, while construction then commences. On a hospital, you've got very, very, very complex facilities. You've got operating rooms, you've got intensive care rooms, you've got laboratories and cooling facilities and heating facilities. You just can't do 33% of design while you start construction, while you've got intensive care that needs to work with the whole building. The whole building needs to be designed and inspected so that it's safe to the public and the people that are going to use it in the future. When the LAO looked at this in 2005, they agreed that design build was not appropriate for complex facilities such as hospitals. For those reasons, we're opposed to this bill.
Janice Norman on behalf of the American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees. Similar to the testimony provided on the other bill, we are opposed to this bill. The only thing we would add to the testimony is that there is a project in Sonoma Valley that is yet to be completed. It may make sense to allow that project to be completed to see what the experience is before we expand this authority. With that, we are opposed to this measure and ask for your no vote.
Thank you very much. Questions of the committee? Mr. Davis?
You had some concerns with the project, or you don't have enough data on the implementation of design build in the current hospital in Sonoma?
It's the implementation on the. Let me back up. What we're waiting for is the experience, similar to the concerns outlined by the LAO with regard to the complexity of how do you build a hospital. We want to see whether or not, number one, the big thing with design build is whether it comes in on time, on budget. This project has yet to be completed, and so we can't determine whether or not this project is coming in on time, on budget. And then we do have the similar concerns as we outlined previously, the lack of competitive bidding because you are building these consortiums, and so whether or not you have a relationship with contractors, we feel limits the ability of minority businesses and small businesses to participate. But if we can't even determine whether or not it achieves its primary goal of coming in on time under budget, we don't think it's appropriate for an expansion of this authority.
Do you have any knowledge that under the current Sonoma project that there has been a disallowing of women and minority-owned businesses to participate?
Not specifically. I don't think there's a specific sort of allegation we would place on a contractor. But it's been our general sort of experience that as you do design build, it limits that ability.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Ambula.
Just a comment. The bill, as I understand it, authorizes a board of directors to use design build. It doesn't require them to do it, but it gives them that option so that if they, in their informed judgment, think that it's beneficial, they may do so. You know, if it were a county, for example, and Mark Ridley Thomas or Gloria Molina on the LA Board of Supervisors felt they were doing something good for their constituents, why should we say they can't have that option?
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, Mr. Nilo.
We, of course, discussed a number of concerns with regard to design build with the prior bill. The authority granted in this bill will be governed by the county's authority to use design build. So to the extent that addressed the concerns with design build, then it has also been addressed in this bill by association. And with that, I would ask your aye vote.
Thank you. I believe we do have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
The motion is do pass as amended to be re-referred to the Committee on Appropriations. Smythe.
Aye.
Smythe, aye. Caballero. Arambula. Arambula, aye. Bradford. Davis. Davis not voting. Knight. Knight, aye. Logue. Logue, aye. Solorio. Swanson.
Swanson, no.
Swanson, no. Bill needs one vote.
All right, the measure needs one more vote. It's on call.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Mr. Nilo. As it has. We have item number 4, item number 2, SB 694 by Senator Correa, and I believe we have staff here to present.
This was on the last, yeah.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. I'm John Scriven with Senator Correa's office. Pleased to present 694 to you today, a measure dealing with the Uniform Cost Accounting Act that I'm pleased to say has had quite a thorough vetting with all the stakeholders involved in the process, and we come to you with a unanimity of opinion. We're asking for your consideration of this measure that basically extends some of the time limits out to ensure that there's a continuous process, that all parties are able to deal with any matters to be resolved without feeling like they're being stressed. And because of that, all the parties have come to agreement on this bill. I have Mr. Vermeulen here, who's prepared to testify.
Thank you. We do have a motion and a second. Very quickly, witnesses in support.
Mr. Chair, Phil Vermeulen, representing the sponsors, the Engineering Contractors Association. This has been a system that has worked very well with a few tweaks that we're proposing here in this measure. The system will work even better. And with that, we urge an aye vote. There is no opposition. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, Dave Ackerman, representing Associated General Contractors. We were the original sponsor of the Uniform Construction Cost Accounting Act in 1983, and this is a little tweak for it that actually, through our experience, makes it work better, and we appreciate your aye vote.
Great, thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition?
No.
Questions from the committee? We have a motion and a second. We'll take that as your close. Please call the roll.
The motion is due pass to the Committee on Business, Professions, and Consumer Protection. Smythe.
Aye.
Smythe, aye. Caballero. Arambula. Arambula, aye. Bradford. Bradford, aye. Davis. Davis, aye. Knight. Knight, aye. Logue. Logue, aye. Solorio. Swanson. Swanson, aye. Bill's out.
That measure is out.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. We have one more measure. Thank you, Senator Hancock, and she is en route.
Is there an opportunity to add on to prior votes in the interim?
Absolutely.
Since she left a while ago, so you know how that is.
Senator Hancock.
All right, we would like to proceed with item number 10, SB 1035 by Senator Hancock. Senator.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. This is a district bill for the water district that serves the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay. EBMUD provides water service to about 1.3 million residents of Alameda and Contra Costa counties. Unlike many...
I move the bill.
Second.
Thank you. All we want is the ability to do what every other water district can do, put a lien on property when the property owner doesn't pay the bills.
Thank you. Witnesses in support.
Marlene Dumaine with the East Bay Municipal Utility District.
Just a few comments to add on. We are having a tremendous problem with account delinquencies now. Since 2006, we've seen a steep rise, and we're now, for 2009, at about $3 million in delinquencies. Having this lien authority would give us another tool to work with our customers to keep their water on and help prevent blight. It's not a license to use water indiscriminately. They would still need to comply with our restrictions on water wasting and all of our conservation and drought rationing requirements. We also have the support of our business community, so we respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Casey Kaneko of Suter and Associates on behalf of the Alameda County Board of Supervisors, which is co-sponsoring this measure for two reasons: economic development and public safety. When properties are abandoned, they're an invitation to graffiti and other sorts of crime, and we would like for East Bay Mud to be able to leave the water on, and this gives them a tool to be able to do that, and so that the bill is paid by the rightful person and not subsidized by the rest of the property owners in the county. We urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Any other questions from the committee? We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
The motion is do pass and re-refer to the Committee on Judiciary. Smythe.
No.
Smythe, no. Caballero. Caballero, aye. Arambula. Arambula, aye. Bradford. Bradford, aye. Davis. Davis, aye. Knight. Knight, no. Logue. Logue, no. Solorio.
Solorio, aye.
Solorio, aye. Swanson.
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, aye.
That measure is up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Members, we have one item on call that remains that we needs to be dispensed with. That is item number 7, SB 1005 from Senator Cox. The current vote is 4-1. Please call the roll.
Caballero. No. Caballero, no. Bradford. No. Bradford, no. Davis. No. Davis, no. Solorio. Solorio, aye. Bill's out.
That measure is out. And with that, we do have, we're going to leave the roll open for a few more minutes, for about 5 more minutes while we finish up to allow members to add on. Those of you who have voted on everything, thank you very much for coming.